there's the notch, the little chip that came out of it. I guess I dropped it on the floor before we ever even started turning it. But I've got it centered between two fixed points and a 60-degree tailstock on this end. And I've been using this, the 3/8 spindle gauge. So let's see what's going to happen. Okay, what I've done here now, I've continued to work it down with the 3/8 spindle, and then I began working it down with the sandpaper at about 700 RPMs. And you can see how well the 80 grit sandpaper will take it down. Now, it's a little, has more of a conish effect because of the combination of the 60-degree tailstock angle and the 45-degree spindle angle. That's the best I could do in there. I may consider taking it down a little and rounding this off just a little bit more to give it a little more pleasing effect. Yeah, I've taken the parting tool and I've made a stem here that allows me to get in and round this off a little bit smoother, a little bit softer, and I believe it's going to be a whole lot better. But I still need the support from the tailstock. I have to stay between the centers because this, when I re-drilled, it's not perfectly centered. It's hard to do that, so I just need to continue just gradually working this down a little bit and giving me enough stem there to support it, enough small stem here to support it. And then I'll be able to come in with the sandpaper and then shape it a little bit differently and soften it up on the outside. Okay, what I've done so far, as I mentioned earlier, I took the parting tool and parted just a small stem, and that softened the cone shape of the handle. Then I've taken 80 grit sandpaper at about 700 RPM, and I've worked this over around with a really, really soft turn on the back. And I think I'm just about ready now. As you can see, none of the chips are left, and it's all gone. The 80 will basically shape more than anything else. But what I'm going to do next is I'll go through the grits. Okay, I'm almost finished with the 80, but then I'll go through the grits, and the grits will be 120, 150, 220, 320, 400, 600, and 800. And when I finish with the regular sandpaper, I'll go through the micro mesh, starting with the 1500 all the way through the 12,000. This will be a wet sand, and I'll include that on how I do that also. But right now, I'm just going to go through the regular grits, and there's no need to show that. Okay, I don't know if you can see or not, but I've sanded through all the grits that I mentioned all the way up to 800. And there it comes in a little bit better focus. You can see it doesn't quite have the sheen. So now I'm ready to work the micro mesh through, and that'll be a wet sand, and that'll bring the sheen back and polish it up real good, starting with a 1500 grit and going all the way to 12,000. Okay, I've worked through all the grits. We've got the area clean, and I put some protection down for the lathe to keep it from gathering water. And I'm going to start working with the micro mesh, starting with the 1500, and this basically is going to smooth. But turn the speed down to about 600, maybe go 700. But I want to go through all the mesh from 1500 up to 12,000. It'll take several minutes. But by the time I'm done, it should all blend in well and be very properly polished. Now, this is watered, I've soaked it in water. It's a wet sand. And when I'm done, with each grit of the micro mesh, I'll take a towel and I wipe the slurry off. That's because if I don't, it will leave some of the grit behind. And you can see now it's starting to, it doesn't have the luster that the other portion of the handle does, but it's all smoothed out, no scratches, and that's just through the first grit. So I'm going to work through the other grits and I'll be back then. Alright, we've worked through all the grits. I'm at the 12,000 grit now. And when you start working the micro mesh, basically, you're not doing sanding, you're just doing a really fine polishing. You may remember just a few minutes ago, this end here had scratches in it. Let's say from the 80 grit, had scratches, white powdery looking substance, a dull finish, contrasted greatly with the other portion which had been completely finished. And now that I'm at the 12,000, just moving the pad around so that it doesn't wear in any one particular position. And I'll remove the slurry. I'm only doing about 600 RPM here. I'm going to take the slurry off. Just a paper towel. Stop. And wow, there we have it. Ties right into the rest. Now what I'm going to do now, come over, the tool rest in position. I'm going to use a thin parting tool and I'm going to part the nib off once again at a slow speed. Just part the nib off as smooth as I can. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm just about halfway through the mesh grits, and you can see how fine a polish and how fine a finish that we're starting to get on the end where the nib was. The nib is basically gone, and the polish and shine is starting to show through. So basically what I'm doing, I'm just taking the mesh and I'm working the convex end of the handle, and you might start to see some slurry that I mentioned earlier. You can start to see the slurry form right here. This is why we always clean the end with a towel before we go on to the next grit, because this slurry right here will actually leave grit behind and will affect the polishing of the acrylic. Okay, I've got the finished product here. It's rounded, polished, and I didn't use any wax or polish, just the micro mesh. I've done drilled a 1/2 inch hole in the end on the drill press and tapped the hole and was able to screw in the insert. Now I'm just ready to screw the two pieces together, snug it down just a bit, and there I have the finished product.